Power creep is a major part of Rise of Kingdoms, and it's always something that's going to be around. And today, I'll be explaining what power creep is. I'll tell you why it's some ways necessary for the game to survive and evolve, and I'll tell you how to build your account in the best way to mitigate what power creep actually is. If you want to know what power creep is, or you want to build your account so you have a strong, powerful account that is going to last many years, then you definitely need to watch today's video. Let's start off simple. What is power creep? And in the simplest terms, it is basically when old commanders, let's say Ramses, become very outclassed by new commanders such as Boudica Prime. That is pretty much simply what power creep is. As soon as new commanders come out, Lilith has made them more powerful than the old ones, and then the new commanders outpower the old commanders. That is power creep in its simplest terms. Now, why does Lilith really make power creep a thing? And I think it's actually, I know this is a bit controversial, necessary for the game to truly evolve. If we want to have an evolving game that isn't just the same open field for years and years on end, then you need some form of power creep. Whether that be in rallies, whether that be in garrisons, whether it be in the open field, eventually a commander has to be outclassed because you are still getting gold heads daily. So you're getting daily gold heads, you're getting more equipment, you're getting stuff that's making your commanders more powerful. And eventually those commanders have to be replaced and have to become weaker. It's just a simple cycle of the game. If this didn't happen, Lilith probably wouldn't be making money, and we probably wouldn't have a Rise of Kingdoms. That's what would happen without power creep. Now, at the moment, Lilith is cranking out commanders like they're going out of fashion. Less than a year ago, Boudica was the best archer commander. Now people say LIANG is the best. Less than a year before that, Nebu was the best archer commander, and now people say that Nebu is not even usable. So, it's really easy to see how power creep definitely does affect how the game is run, and certainly does affect commanders. It affects a lot of players who invest in specific commanders. So it is a bit unfortunate for free-to-play low spenders who do invest in a commander really heavily, and then within 2 years possibly can't even use that commander. It does become really unfortunate then. Now, another issue where power creep is really present, it's really in rallies and garrisons, because Lilith seems to have this thing where they change out rallies and garrisons like they're going out of fashion. I don't think there's a single garrison that's been in meta since like the last 2 years. The only commander I could think of that is still used within the last 2 years is Zenobia, and even then she's not as good as some of the newer commanders. Yes, you can certainly still use her, and yes, she's going to trade fine, but you'd rather have a commander such as Heraclius, you'd rather have a commander like a Jan Ziska, or even a Queen DIDO, who is the current best garrison. You'd rather have those commanders over a Zenobia. So, the current meta garrisons are always changing, and they're changing really quick. Within basically 3 months, you can expect whichever garrison commander you maxed to become almost obsolete, or at least a lot weaker than when they were in the meta. So that's a really big issue. Power creep is way bigger of an issue in garrisons. At least with open fields, if you invest in any commander that's just come out, you can expect that commander to last at least 2 to 3 years. For example, people who invested in Saladin are still using him today, and I think he came out around 3 years ago. So you can certainly see that investing in commanders for open field is going to last a lot longer than Rally and Garrison, and I think that's just because the Rally and Garrison meta is definitely full of whales, and Lilith is kind of just trying to milk those whales for as much money as they can get. That's pretty much the simplest theory I have for that. And once again, it is necessary for the game, because if it was just the same rallies and garrisons, there would always be the same rally at the top, and it would always be a best garrison. So there is some need of the power creep to actually evolve the game and make the game a little bit more interesting, though I don't think it should be happening every 3 months. So what's the real issue with power creep? Why do a lot of people hate it? And I think the simplest answer is, if you invest in a commander, there's really no guaranteed value. For example, Gilgamesh came out, and then less than a year later, Scipio Prime came out and basically made Gilgamesh obsolete. Like, Scipio Prime rocked up, and Gilgamesh, the best archer commander at the time, became next to useless. Like, his debuff became useless because Scipio had said debuff. Like, the big thing that Gilgamesh was known for, which was his debuff, became useless after Scipio came out because Gilgamesh's debuff did not stack with Scipio. So right there is already just straight off to a prime example of why power creep can be really bad, especially if you're power creeping on a newer commander. For example, let's say right now ZHUGE comes out, and then within less than a month from now, they release a commander that has all these debuffs and more damage than him. It's just a different troop type. At that point, you're basically power creeping, but very, very fast, and that's basically what happened with Gilgamesh, and that's where it becomes really bad for low spenders and free-to-players, where you don't have enough time to recollect your gold heads before you spend them. On average, a free-to-play can max around 2.5 commanders per year if they're really grinding. So if you're adding commanders faster than they can collect their gold heads, that's where it becomes an issue, where free-to-players can't even max 1 march per year. that's actually going to be good. So how would I recommend trying to prevent power creep from being a major issue on your account? Yes, eventually every commander you get will have to be replaced, but when you invest in the right commanders and do it correctly, you will be able to have them last at least 3 years. So let's start off with what do you do to really mitigate power creep? And the first tip, which is super simple, is just don't invest in old commanders for the most part. It's always going to be better to invest in the meta. I think that's a great saying. Better to invest in the meta. If you want to invest in any commanders, get the meta ones. If you want to get some cav marchers, I wouldn't go back and get an Attila Takeda now. I'd just say get a Nevsky and a Joan. Or better yet, wait for the next cav commanders, which are coming out very soon. So always invest in the meta because it's going to be the best thing for your account. The only time you backwards invest is A, if you're a very weird account like mine where I only use archer units, then you have to backwards invest, you have no other option. Or B, if you're running like 5 marches already and you want to get some of those older commanders to improve your murder ball, even though it may be a short-term investment, then you can consider backwards investing. Otherwise, make sure you have the meta for whatever troop type you're going for. Like, I wouldn't be getting, for example, a Harold until I got a Scipio. That's just the simplest form of it. The other thing you want to do is make sure those commanders have something special to them. So often commanders like rallies and garrisons only carry like damage. They only have like stats that do damage. There's no debuff. There's no AoE sometimes. You want to look for something special. And I think the best example of that would be like a ZHUGE. ZHUGE has a 5-target AoE of 2000. He has a damage reduction debuff. He has extra damage. He has archer health. He has a lot of damage. But he's also got the debuff, which is really good. The debuff is what I'm looking for because all things can be outclassed eventually. We know that the next cav commanders are probably going to 1-up ZHUGE on damage, or they're going to counter ZHUGE. So eventually, ZHUGE won't be meta, and you can certainly expect that with every single commander in the game. There will be no commander that's going to stay in the meta forever. So whenever you invest in a commander, if you're trying to play it very smart and you're not really just investing whichever commanders you want, you're looking for something that makes them special, and it's always going to be a debuff, in my opinion. If a commander has got an amazing debuff, that commander is going to be an amazing commander. Everything else on a commander is pretty much useless, besides maybe AoE. So for example, YSG is still meta because his AoE is just so good. Yes, LIANG is better than YSG, but YSG is still a good commander because his AoE is so good and because he's very accessible in the early game. Commanders like Tamiris or Sargon will still be fairly useful even 2 years from now, and Tamiris would be out like 5 years ago if it was 2 years later. The reason being, they've got amazing debuffs. Their damage will be trashed by them, but their debuffs are going to be extremely valuable, and that's what you're really looking for. I say debuffs are the most valuable part of any commander. Another thing that really makes a commander special is how many targets their AoE hits. For the most part, Lilith gives commanders a 3-target AoE. This means they deal direct damage to up to 3 enemies. So if there are 3 enemies within your active skill range, you will deal damage to them, but anything beyond that, you can't hit. There are not many commanders who offer a 5-target AoE. I'm pretty sure the only ones are YSG, Nebu, ZHUGE, Mehmed, and Ethelfled, if I'm not wrong. I may be wrong there. If I am, please let me know in the comments. But for the most part, those are the commanders with 5-target AoEs. And any commander with a 5-target AoE is instantly going to get an advantage over every other commander, because every other commander only really has a 3-target AoE. This means that if you can hit more people, you can deal more damage. If they have a debuff on their active skill, you're spreading that debuff more. So all around, getting 5 targets is obviously way better than having 3, and it's something else that makes a commander very interesting. Next is to look at the types of stats they have. In simplest form, the most important stat in the game that is a base stat is health. So getting health over attack and defense is extremely important. Yes, there are some commanders who are still pretty good with like defense and attack, but no health, for example, Henry and Boudica. But for the most part, if you can get health on a commander, that commander is going to be more valuable than their counterparts. Above health, you'd be looking for all damage and skill damage, depending on what you want. Usually, you'd say you want all damage over skill damage, so a commander with high all damage and high health is usually a very good commander. For example, ZHUGE once again fits that category very well, having a lot of skill damage, having a lot of all damage, and having a lot of health. He's just kind of the best commander in the game right now, so he kind of just fits all the categories really well. Next, I'd also want to look at the accessibility of the commander. If I can get them only in Wheel of Fortune, that's unfortunate, but if I can purchase them in Daily Special Offer, if you want to spend the money, they may be a better investment than some other commanders, because you don't have to put any gold duds in them. You can just spend a little bit of money per day, get the 3 chests, and open those chests to get the commanders. That's something else I'd be looking into, is accessibility. Are they only Wheel of Fortune? Can I get them in Legendary Tavern? Can I only get them in Mightiest Governor? How many resources will it cost me to win Mightiest Governor? Stuff like that is extremely important, especially when you're looking to actually get yourself some of these newer commanders. Now, the next main tip to counter power creep is to make sure the commanders you're investing in synergize well with your mutable. This means that their skill damage, whatever they're doing on their skills, works well with some of your other commanders and the rest of your mutable. For example, if I have a bunch of commanders which are making the opponent take a ton more skill damage, I probably will not go and get an Attila and a Takeda because they don't do any skill damage. If my whole mutable is built around skill damage, they're going to be almost useless for it, and in those situations, you'd be skipping that type of a commander. If you already have a very good slow debuff on any of your commanders, you probably don't want a Saladin because A, it may not stack because active skill debuffs do not stack, they stack with passive skill debuffs, or B, the slow debuff I have is already enough. So for example, if I have a Honda Tedakatsu and his slow is just doing really good and it's working perfectly fine, I'm not going to go get a Saladin because I don't need Saladin's slow. Then also look for commanders which synergize really well but don't necessarily have to be paired together. For example, Cyrus makes the opponent take more additional damage factor over time. Ramses, his active skill, deals additional damage factor. So in situations like that, once again, that is a good synergy, and that's where those two commanders would be valuable if you put them together in a full mutable. The next thing to prevent your account from basically succumbing to power creep is if you are a lower spender or a free-to-play, don't get any rally commanders, don't get any garrison commanders, and probably not getting any of the new leadership commanders. They are usually the second best option. For example, Honda Tedakatsu is always going to be the second best investment, but never truly the best investment. So make sure you're skipping garrisons, rallies, and usually the leadership commanders, unless a really, really overpowered one comes. The simplest reason behind this is, yes, garrisons and rallies are really helpful to your kingdom, but A, if you're a free-to-play, you probably won't have the crystal tech, or you won't have the equipment to properly rally and garrison a flag. That's one issue that comes with having rallies. B, you're not going to be rallying cities that much. I know a lot of people say, I'm going to get a rally to hit cities. Yes, you maybe get like 2 rallies in a KVK, but it's not worth like 1,000 gold heads. So skip rallies and skip garrisons. Also, rally commanders, let's say for example a Henry, they don't tend to have any debuffs. Usually a rally is just pure stats. Like my Henry is 2,300 damage. He's got a skill damage taken reduction. He's got a lot of stats. He's very powerful right now. But I know in 2 years from now, I may not even be using Henry because he just won't be good. That's the thing with rallies and garrisons. You know that they're eventually going to fade off. It's one reason I don't really want to take my Nebu plus 5511, just because I know that in at least a year from now, Nebu's probably not going to be a good commander, especially since all of his stats, they really don't have any debuffs besides like a rage reduction, which is pretty useless. It's even worse for garrisons because often garrison commanders have even less field usability than rallies. Rallies at least have abilities that buff them on the open field because they are on the open field for the most part. That's why rallies are still somewhat okay of an investment. For example, if you get a rally the second it comes out and you use it on the open field, it's going to trade amazingly. Yes, obviously 2 years from now it won't be, but if you get a garrison and use them on the open field, they're going to work barely when they first release, and then within the next commander cycle, they're going to be useless on the field. For example, if you got DIDO for the open field and you're using her now, she might be trading 1 to 2, 1 to 3, maybe if you're lucky. When the new Cavs come out, she's going to be trading 0 to 1. Like, she's going to get absolutely wrecked. It's not even going to be close. So that's another thing with garrisons especially. Even a Monotoro, who was a good garrison for the field, completely fell off within like 3 months. Like, she just lost all her usability. Often garrison commanders have 2 skills that have something related to a garrison, where rally commanders often only have 1 thing related to a rally. So for example, my Henry only has 1 skill that's related to a rally. My Nebu only has 1 skill that's related to rallying. Artemisia, on the other hand, has 2 skills that have some relation to garrison. Yes, her 4th skill is usable on the field, but it's just morely related to garrisons. With DIDO, she has 2 skills that are related to garrison. Yes, her 4th skill is usable on the field, but you're missing out on a ton of stats. The same can be said for a lot of commanders. So, for example, Pakal has basically 2 rally skills, but first of all, it's only 5% all damage on one of the skills, and the other skills are rally skill, but the rest all open field. So, you can see that all these commanders are very field usable, while the garrison commanders tend not to be. Like a Zenobia, for example, she's got 2 garrison skills, so you can definitely expect that these commanders will not have as much field viability. Rally commanders, yes, they are an okay investment, but they're never going to be the best investment. Once again, only get them if you already have the meta for that troop type. The next tip is just to save your gold heads. For example, once I get 3 marches that are in a solid place, maybe after I expertise LIANG, I may just save gold heads. I may just begin stashing him. Maybe I'll expertise my Henry, I'll finish him off. But after that, I don't think I need to spend any more gold heads. I'll just save them all. That's pretty much my plan. Once you get a good mutable, usually around 3 marches for most players, you're going to be working on equipment mostly, so just save your gold heads. Don't use many gems on gold head related events. Use your gems mostly to get equipment, because that's going to pretty much have value for a very long time. Equipment is always going to be valuable. There's currently no major power creep in equipment. So if you want to get anything, just get equipment with your gems. Save all your gold heads from like your daily VIP, from things like Kurok and Ark of Osiris. Save those gold heads, and when the new commanders come out, you'll be able to purchase everything that they have to offer. You'll maybe be able to even max a commander on release if you save enough gold heads, if you play it smart and play it patient. So if you're looking to run 3 marches and you get your 3 marches, don't bother going to 4 marches unless you are in like a major equipment overflow where you've got too much equipment and you can't really improve your 3 marches anymore. Then maybe work your way towards getting your 4th march. But until then, just save gold heads and get the new commanders and replace your old commanders. That's what I would recommend if you really want to get away from power creep. The final tip I can give you is to prepare the second you hear any news about new commanders. If you know you're ready to max a commander when they come out, or you want to be very close to ready, prepare from the minute you hear any leaks, the minute you hear any news about it. Usually when news for a commander comes out, within maybe 3 to 4 weeks, you can expect that commander to land in the game. Very simple. You don't really have too much time to fully prepare, but the second you hear about any news, whether it be about a leak that's a bit sketchy, just save your gems, alright? Don't do any events, don't spend your gems in a crazy way like I did with losing all of my gems. Just save them all, and then when the new commander comes out, if you don't like him, then you can spend your gems. At the worst case, you maybe miss like a Holy Knight's Treasure or a dig event, and then you're not risking not being able to get the new commanders when they release. Now, the final tip for today is just don't invest in commanders past the point that you need them to. For example, for most players, like I've said before, if you're going for Boudica Prime, don't take her past 5551. She doesn't really need her expertise. Yes, it's a nice little buff, but especially if you have a LIANG who's giving you a 50% chance to shrug all silences, don't even bother expertising Boudica. There is no point. For the most part, a lot of commanders can be left at 5551 or equivalent. There are even some commanders who you could leave at just their first 2 skills. Especially if you're going for a rally commander, often their first 2 skills are their best skills. So you could even use, for example, Tarek at just his first 2 skills. He's certainly usable. You can use him until you have to replace him, and it's not too heavy of an investment. Just like I did with Nebu. I've only got his first 2 skills maxed because I know he's going to be very replaceable in the future, and that's a very good way of just picking what you need from a commander. If you notice that an expertise in a commander is extremely valuable, then you go for it. For example, ZHUGE's expertise allows you to get 4,500 damage factor within 1 skill cycle every single time you enter combat. That is a really good expertise. Some other expertises may be useless. A commander, for example, like I said before, Boudica's expertise is not necessary, but for ZHUGE it is, so you have to go on a commander by commander basis, and that's very important for your account. Overall, power creep is something that's never really going to go away in Rise of Kingdoms. If we want the game to still exist, Lilith has to make money, and for Lilith to make money, there's got to be something new for people to buy, and the commanders usually are the way they go with this, since everyone will end up getting the new commanders. Now, these videos take a lot of time and effort to make, and to help them reach more players so they can understand how to be best and better equipped against power creep, all I ask is to please like the video. It shares the video with more people. YouTube really likes when people like the video. I know my comedy is popping off right now, and it is always much appreciated and helps the channel out. Now, I just want to say thank you for watching and hope to see you in the next one.